Watching this season of LCK, the summer season, and seeing SK Telecom still right up there among the top teams, the elite teams in Korea, seeing Faker among the best mids in Korea, among the best players of any kind in Korea, and thus among the best players in the world, looking at what he's done this year already, winning LCK the spring season, winning MSI, winning IEM. This is a guy where, I already did a past video about it where I called him like the greatest outlier in the history of League of Legends. Because the point I made was he wasn't just the greatest player, but he was so laughably the greatest player. And in terms of consistency and the skill ceiling and overall skill set and the amount of things he'd won, that he was just the ultimate outlier. Even within his team, he was this crazy talent that you just don't see in any other members of the team that he's played with in his career. But now it's gotten even more ridiculous because now a year or so has passed since that video. So right now, in terms of being the greatest player of all time, Faker is just so far ahead. It's laughable at this point in time. No one can catch him probably unless League lasts like 5 more years and he has some sort of dip and stops winning, stops being an excellent player. Just in terms of pure consistency of performance, you look across his entire career, which began in 2013 competitively, when's he ever had a bad year? Even his bad year, the one where he didn't win shit, was 2014. He still won All-Stars, but admittedly that wasn't as like the best team in the world or whatever. But even in that year, he was still good. He was still like hovering around elite. He still had some great performances himself. The meta wasn't fitting him, wasn't fitting his team. Certainly his team dropped off heavily. He was still very good. If that's his low, then you know how fucking incredible this guy is. Because we know his peaks. He's had multiple peaks in his career, particularly obviously 2013, 2015, when he was the best player in the world, at times by far the best player, and in certain tournaments just looks imperious and untouchable. And obviously that 2013 peak, the game itself was a lot more wide open for star players and less team orientated at that point in time. For a start, we didn't have Sightstone. We had people just able to, we didn't have the trinkets rather, we had people just able to put down infinite wards. So in that era, sure, no one will probably ever match that peak. That was so crazy. But what he's been able to do since again and again is so incredible. Then you look at longevity. The sheer amount of time he has spent as the world's best player is unbelievable. Especially because in the times when he takes a dip and he can pick someone else, Gorilla, Smeb, different eras of time, obviously Flame, there's different people you could pick. He's the only one who always comes back. He's the only one who returns to that top level again and becomes the best player again. And this in itself is just mysterious. We've never seen anything like this in League of Legends, particularly in League of Legends and MOBA type games. It's incredible. There's adaptation to new meta games when the style of how you play the game changes. It's obviously changed radically from the days of the pick comp SK Telecom in 2013. And even the 2015 lineup played very differently, even though they were still teamfight oriented as SKT always has been to some degree. Adaptation to new champions is incredible. In this very split alone, the guy has wins on 8 different champions. He has always had one of the deepest champion pools in the world. Sometimes there's been tournaments where he didn't have to play at the main champions, like in the playoffs, because other teams just gave up and just let him have his champions or just banned out 1 or 2 key champions instead of letting him play anything else. His ability to always get updated with the new meta and with new champions as they come out is incredible. Even that rare piece of time in early 2015 where people said, right, well, I understand why SKT uses EasyHoon, he's better on Azir. Okay, there might have been a time where EasyHoon was better on Azir. Faker is a much better player on Azir right now. And since then, his Azir came on and evolved more, so he became one of the best Azir players. This is a guy where he's had to adapt to different teammates. Remember, all his accomplishments come with different lineups now. He's played that long. So he had to adapt to different SK Telecoms. There was SK Telecom K, where the only teammate he shared in common with any of his later teams was Bengi. Now, SK Telecom K was built primarily on Faker at the time. Jungle mid synergy was very hit big. And then the other star player, the other carry, was Piglet. Impact was more of a tank top and was more of a utility top player, though he's good in that role himself. Then you go to the post-merger team where it's just SK Telecom. Now it's based around Marin being a shot-calling top who's always aggressive, always trying to win out and get ahead in his lane, calling the jungler to him. Faker still adapts around that. It's built around Marin and Faker. They win worlds with that team as well as they had with K. Then you go to the current SK Telecom, the post-2015 World Championship one, where they brought in Duke, a fantastic individual solo laner at top lane, but not a guy who was as good as a team component. And now they've moved it so that Bang's more like the secondary carry in the team. Now it's Faker and Bang that the team is built around. Now we've gone back to the old setup of AD carry mid, but in a very different world. Like 3 years later, And it's still a fantastic team and it still wins. And he always finds a way within whatever the setup is to be a great player who either is the star carry or contributes to his team. Like if you make it so that you want Mariner, you want Bang to carry in certain team fights or in certain lanes, then Faker can play safe now. Faker can play so that he doesn't get behind, or if he gets behind, he finds a way to be impactful later in the game, which is one thing he's always been incredible for. He's also had to adapt to different junglers. So the one thing you could say about Faker leading into 2015 Worlds is, but he has always had the same jungler. And jungle mid synergy is always famously an important component of the mid laner's success. That's not the case anymore. This guy took blank and he went off, and he was able to win MSI. He was able to win IEM World Championship. He was able to do this with blank. Now you got Bengi back again. He's had Bengi for different seasons. These are totally different, drastically different ends of the spectrum of jungler. There's the tanky jungler style, or admittedly Bengi did show a few Lee Sin games, etc. every now and then. Then Blank's more that aggressive, in-your-face jungler who's just going to go in and try and get kills and try and provide lane pressure. Totally different styles. Faker never stops being fantastic with all of them. Then you just look at the guy's accomplishments. His accomplishments alone just outstrip anyone. Like normally, accomplishments alone don't count for everything because you can be on fantastic teams and not be better than a player who's actually fantastic individually but on a bad team. But it's like Faker has everything else and the accomplishments that are better than everyone else's too. No one can fuck with his accomplishments. Here's a guy who has 2 world championships. Here's a guy who has 5 OGN/LCK titles. No one else is near those number of titles. No one else has 2 world championships. No one else has 5 OGN/LCK titles. Because remember, those of them that Bengi wasn't a starter for, I don't count that as he won that title. He was just on the team and received like the customary honorary ring that people get when they're a little scrub in basketball. He won All-Stars 2014. He won IEM World Championship 2016. He won the MSI in 2016. Think of all the records he's got. He's tied for the most appearances in a world final ever. He's won the most world finals ever. He's tied for the most MSI finals ever. Because technically All-Stars 2014 was basically the MSI of 2014. So he's been in all 3 of the MSI finals. Even if you don't count All-Stars, he's been in 2 MSI finals. Great, that's sick in itself. He's made the most OGN finals and LCK finals. He's made 5, won all 5. Mad Life has only made it to 3. He's made the playoffs of every single season of OGN/LCK he has ever competed in. So by my count, 8 seasons so far. Blaze and Frost had an incredible run from early on in Korea. They only managed 7 in a row, and 7 total. I mean, I guess that doesn't, I guess that still count. I guess that doesn't really count as much to say in total because there were CJ after that and they made some playoffs. But in terms of the organizations, they made 7, he's made 8. To me, the reason he transcends the game is that he's not just the best league player in history. He's not just the best league player at certain points in time, but he's just the best league player in any context. He's just the best player. Forget the league part. So you move him out of league and you look at esports, and he certainly can go. Even though league as a game, it doesn't have the same skill cap as certain other games like Brood War and Quake, doesn't necessarily have the same level of, how would you describe it? Well, since in theory a league match is one entity. When you get ahead in that entity, you can kind of use that pressure to win the game in a way that you can't in the same degree in games like Counter-Strike, where it's still incremental, you still get reset, the opponent still has a chance to come back and win entirely if they can go on the reset round where you have equal guns and they can just win every round from there. It's not the same in a league game. So the fact that he's been able to dominate like this, he transcends that to the extent that in esports he's incredible. To me, he really is like the Jordan or Gretzky of his game. He's the guy who was the best, and he transcends the game, and what he did for the game is more than even just his individual level of play, and he has all different teammates around him who succeed with him. Jordan obviously had different teammates except Pippin for all of the 3-peats he had. Gretzky was fantastic even on the Kings. He was even pretty solid later in his career on the Blues. So the only thing I think that prevents Faker from literally being like a Jordan or Gretzky who transcends even his game in esports is unfortunately the fact that he doesn't have the same level of worldwide fame, even in league to a degree, just purely in the sense that he's not the number one name at all times because of his background being from Korea. He doesn't really do interviews in English. In that sense, though, I would contrast him with Messi in football, because Messi famously doesn't really do interviews in English. He's a very private person, but his name still does transcend football, does transcend sport, and we know him as a pop cultural figure. So I think in the same sense, in esports and in gaming, Faker does also hold that status for his excellence and for what an enigmatic, incredible competitor he's been. I made this point in my other video about Faker, but I'll make it again quickly. There didn't have to be a Faker. That's how huge an outlier he is. So when you look at the other all-time great players, I mean, think of some of them. We've got Smeb, we've got Gorilla, we've got Bang, we've got Mata, we've got Froggen, we've got Diamondprox, we've got Bjergsen, we've got Wei Zhao. These players, Mad Life, these are incredible players. These are godlike players in League of Legends. But do all of them transcend League? Not really many of them do. Do all of them really stand up against the other best esports games, titles, players rather, the greats in the other games? Yeah, some of them probably can't, and probably can't show as much in League because they're not the gods even of League always for their whole careers, and they have their ups and downs. There can be players like this. You can take off a Smeb, you can take off a Froggen, you can take off a Mad Life, and there'll still be other sick players. There'll still be fantastic guys who'd win and be gods and look fantastic and be the rest of their roles. Faker is more than that. Faker is something special that we've just never seen before. And so as a result, he does transcend League of Legends. Like if you were to make a Mount Rushmore of League of Legends, already that's very esteemed company. If you're going to put in like Wei Zhao, you're going to put in Faker, you're going to put in Mad Life, you're going to put in Wei Zhao. Who else would I put in that? Forget that for now. But the point is, you're only going to have 3 or 4 names, right? Well, Faker would be on the esports Mount Rushmore at this point in time. So he'd be up there with Flash from Brood War, and then someone like Cooler or Cypher or Fatality from Quake. Faker would have to be up there. He's earned it at this point. That's what an incredible guy this is.